This is Gemara in Kiddushin Daf Ayin Ches as we close out the final few days of Maseches Kiddushin of Seder Nashim, Siyata Dishmaya, looking forward to celebrating being Mechazek, being Mispalel, together with many of you tonight at Bellworks, B'Siyata Dishmaya. We pick it up on Ayin Zayin Amud Beis. We're about 15 lines from the bottom. The first word in the line is Amar Le. Continues the Gemara with the Shaila. Amar Le Rabba Abayi Yisrael Abba Ala Chaisai. As we're on the topic of Isser Chalal, Isser, if a Yisrael is together with his sister, says the Gemara, Zaina Mashvila Chalala Mashvila. What is the status of such a relation? Of course, says the Gemara, creates a Zaina, but does it create a Chalala as well? As the reason there's an Isser is because she's a sister. It's not an Isser pinned specifically on any person. Explains the Gemara, Mi Amrinan. Loy Mashila. So the Gemara explains, Mi Amrinan Kal V'chaymer. Do we say the following Kal V'chaymer? Do we say that once we find that one is created into a chalala via chayil lavin, certainly via chayvi krisos like the silster, Amar le, that's indeed the din in chalala ella, or in chalala ella mi iser kuna balvad. There's only a din of chalala if it's a unique iser to kahuna, and therefore one sister is not a unique iser to kahuna, and therefore would not create a chalala. Amar Rava, Minaham says Rava. For where do we know the following? Damar Rabbana chalala ella mi iser kuna. There's only din of chalala from Isser Kuna. Titania loymer gusha v'kayin gadol. Should not say that it's an Isser of a gusha to gadol. And what v'teisi v'kalva chayimer mikayin hedyet. But now, you know, I would say hash to the kayin hedyet asura that a gusha is forbidden to marry a kayin hedyet. The kayin gadol mibai. Lama Nemra, so why does it say by Kohen Gadol? The teacher is ancient Chaluka Gusha Mizaina, just like there's a difference, a differentiation, a difference in person between a Gusha and a Zaina of a Chalala, Bekoin Hadiyet, Ka Chaluka Bekoin Gadol. That the same divisions apply by a Kohen Gadol. Says Merv Shita, of course it does. Migar Gara, are you going to say the Kohen Gadol is any less? Now that he's been appointed to Kohen Gadol, he gets less dinam than a regular Kohen. Elo, you're right, says the Gemara. Kshem shechaluka, grusha mizayin v'chalol b'koyin hedi kachamana chaluka migusha v'chalol zayin v'koyin gadol. Ask Gemara, chalol lama nemar, in chalol misakuna, zayin lama nemar, zayin lama nemra, nemar kan zayin nemar halan zayina, mal halan zara oy chulin avkan zara chulin. Rav Ashi says the Gemara. Now that we know there's only a din of chalala via nisr kuna. Rav Ashi on the last one of Ayin Zayin Beis. Helka koyin abala chaysef a koyin is together with his own sister, which of course is aser, but says the Gemara Zaina mashvila makes her into a Zaina, but chalala loy mashvila. She does not get the status of a chalala. Based on what we are saying, that the chalala is only if the isser is particularly to koyin and not just that the person happens to be a koyin. Chazir ba allowed, but if after he's with her once, he's then with her again, then I saw chalala, because via the first act of tashmish she becomes a zayna. Then the second time it's living with a zayna, therefore there's an isser kahuna, therefore it creates a chalala. Amar Rav Yehuda koyin gadol ba'almana loikesh tayim. A koyin gadol with an almana gets malchus twice. Achas misham lo yikach, v'achas misham lo yechalel. Says the Gemara, beautiful. V'lekli na misham lo yechalel zaroi. Why is there additional isser for making the children into yichulal, into someone who's puzzle? Says the case is one that he did not finish off the bia, he did not be mazriya zera, therefore it can't be chayav for the child, because such an act would not have a child. Biyasai, the Gemara Biyasa, Masav Rav asked Rava, Almana Gusha, Loike, Misham Shnei Shemai, someone's with Almana and Gusha, they get two malchus. My life, Shnei Sheir Sisu, Loi, psula. Eloshanu says more shemos alzeh v'shemos shnei shemos. Excuse me, alzeh. Ushe shemos alzeh. Yachi ema sefer the sefer the gusha v'chalutze in a chayev ela alachas. Why not two? It says it is it's two isurim included in one. V'chalutza, and that's how the case can be by us. Ask the Gemara v'chalutza derabanan. Tanya gusha in the gusha chalutza minayin tamalemer v'isha midrabanan ukrabas achva alma amar abaya kidish loike ba loike kidish loike misham lo yikach bal loike bal loike excuse lo yikach loike bal loike excuse me bal loike there it goes misham lo yichalel that there it's considered that you should not be mechulal them further. Rav Amar says, Rav Baal loika, loy Baal ino loika. You don't get malchus. Why? Misham dechsev lo yikach lo yichalel. My time lo yikach misham lo yichulal. That's the machlekes. Maya baya b'machzik u'shasai she'im Kidesh v'loy Baal lefanav. If there was Kiddushin, but there never was the subsequent marriage. If there was Kiddushin, they never actually were together. They never consummated the marriage. Like lokachta liyas isha rachmana shtein in Torah. Why are you getting married? Something to remember. You're not getting married for fun and games. You're married li isha. So it says the Gemara of Aleka, and if they never were together, they never were considered one full unit. Boy, the Rav of Kohen Gadol Almana. Shimba v'loy kidesh. The flip side, v'lo sheloike. Ba v'loy chal. Why loy chal zara ba'amaf am rachmana. V'ayuchila and it creates a cholosh. Ne'em moedim amachs gushasa shimba v'loy kidesh. You've all the ma'ila she'inoi loike derech lekuch and asoter. It's only via derech lekuch. And we continue with the two dots of Yehuda Omer af bas ger kibas chol zachar. Sheina loike derech lekuchin aser atayra. That's only going to be derech lekuchin. That it's not going to be the bia itself. It's only going to be if done in the manner of a marriage. When we continue quoting the statement of Rav Yehuda, 4 lines, into the wide lines. Vayin chesed meralef Rav Yehuda Omer bas ger zachar kibas cholol zachar. Says Rav Yehuda, a bas ger zachar has the same din as a bas cholol zachar. Tanya, that was the Mishnah we learned in our Brayser of Yehuda Omer. Bas ger zachar bas cholol zachar. Vadin noisei. Says the Gemara, and in truth, this is logical. This is the Kal v'chaymer dik. Ma cholol sheba mitipa kshera. Cholol came, one part of the parent was kosher. Bita psula ger sheba mitipa psula ger, who was born from goyim in adin shebita psula. Says the Gemara, but how can you equate a cholol to a ger? The obvious kasha, malacholosh kinitzirasai ba'avira. The yitzira of the chol was avira. It's not stam that one of the parents was aser. It was that the creation of a cholol was be'avira. Says the Gemara, kohen gadol ba'almana yoyechiach. That a kohen gadol ba'almana, that's going to prove this story. That what? In the case of kohen gadol ba'almana, she'ini tzirasa ba'avira, and yet pita psula. Ma lekohen gadol ba'almana shkim b'yasei ba'avira. Chol yoyechiach. And that's going to be how we're going to learn out the two dinim v'chazar adin larizek rizav larizek rizas that shav sheben she'ein beroi v'alcohol afanavi is a ger. Therefore, we can bring the ger she'ein beroi v'alcohol. So says the Gemara, the defining factor of the creation of the cholol, the tzadashaveh, is going to be that what she'inoi beroi v'alcohol, that it doesn't apply to the majority. Ubita psula. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Ubita psula malat tzadashaveh. But in Tzad Shaveh, there is a Tzad Avera. Whereas in the case of a Kohen Gadol, how can we apply this to the case of a Ger, which there is no Tzad Avera? Don't say from Kohen Gadol to Almana, can I go prove the din? Elaima mitzri rishain yoichiach. That says Gemara, 1 second. Malam mitzirisha kinenu yirau ilavei bekal. Mitzirisha can never marry into Klal Yisrael. So how can you say that that's going to be the proof? Chol yochev charizel larizav larizek rizez at hashav sheben she'enu yirau v'akal lupita psulo. So the same Sada Shava. The question is, where do we learn it out from? Obvious, a ger. Says the Gemara, 1 second. How can you learn from Sada Shava? Because in the case of the Sada Shava, she gained Paislin Bibiyasa, that the woman herself became apostle via the act of Bia. So how can you say this is going to apply to a Chol and a Mitzri? Excuse me, that's by a Chol and a Mitzri. But how do we say this applies to regular ger? Regular ger doesn't make one possible biyasa. Rav Yehuda says the Gemara, no. Gernami possible biyasa ma'islam minasad and me'aydina. Rav Yehuda Gufa learns that as well in the case of the ger, it does indeed create a paslos of bibiyah, and that's going to learn out from over here. So that's going to be the Ma'amatzino, the Ma'atzad. Rav Yehuda is going to learn out his din that a ger is going to also create a cholol on some level. Says the Gemara, the Mishnah continued in quarter, ger. We're about 7 lines from the bottom of Ayin and Aleph. Tanya says the Gemara, Rashbi Yoimer Gi Oires Bechusam Yibashal Shanam Yoim Echad Sheira Likuhuna Gi Oires, that's less than 3 years old in one day. Skasha Likuhuna Shenamar, as the Apostle says, Chataf Benashim. The pasuk begins and says all the nashim, all the female children, hechayu lochem, that you should let them live. Says the Gemara, V'alo Pinchas Pinchas was with them. So it must be that even though Pinchas was a kohen, and a girl that was Pachas Bishal Shanim is in Mutzer Likuna. What do they answer? Hechayu lochem navodas l'shivchas. What does it mean? Allow them, spare them. It means avodim l'shivchas. Doesn't mean they actually can marry them. It means you can just take them as an eved. Says the Gemara, we have 4 opinions. V'kulan mikra echa darshil, all darshaning one pasuk, 3 lines from the bottom on Ayin Ches Amud Aleph. Almana agushal yikchu lahem linashim. Rather, kim besulas mizera beis Yisrael. So says the Gemara that the kohen cannot take an almana agusha, and only a besula he could take mizera beis Yisrael. So of course those last 3 words are the interesting words that we're going to darshan. What does it mean mizera beis Yisrael? Rav Yehuda savar dislike calls Zara mi Yisrael. Those when Yaakov savar mizara, Rav Hillel makes Zara. Rav Yossi savar mishan nizra be Yisrael. Rav Shimon Yochai savar mishan nizra besula be Yisrael. So 4 different ways of learning out what does it mean mizera beis Yisrael. At what level the zera has to be from Yisrael. Rav Yehuda holding out this like kol zera mi Yisrael, and therefore a ger who has a daughter is going to be apostle like kahuna. Rav Yaakov says even mixes zera. Rav Yossi says that has to have one parent being kosher. It says as long as both of the parents were giorim, then it's going to be mutter like kahuna. And Rashbi is teaching us b'shazara b'sulam mi Yisrael that if she became a ger before she reached the stage of Bisula, of Zera Bisula Israel, then it's going to be mutter l'kohuna. Amar le Rav Nachman the Rava, as we turn over to Ayin Chesem Beis, asks Rav Nachman to Rava, Hi Kra, this pasuk that we just quoted, Reisha b'koyin gadol, v'seifa b'koyin hadit. So it asks Rav, as Rav Nachman to Rava, how do you larshan this pasuk? We have the pasuk that's lacking in parallel. The beginning of the pasuk begins to a kohen gadol, and then the pasuk concludes talking about a kohen hadit. Amar le'in? No, that's indeed how to learn it. Because of a krahachi, the Tzaracha says, okay, but is this normal? Is this how psukim talk? That it starts off talking about a kohen gadol, then it ends up talking about a kohen hadit? Says the Gemara, Amar le'in. Yes, indeed, this is how sometimes we find psukim having different halves of psasik talking to different people. Terem yichva Hashem. Says the pasuk, and the ner, the candle of Hashem, did not Kohen, and Shmuel was lying in the Beis Hamikdash of Hashem. Does this really mean that Shmuel was lying down? None of that is said. Certainly Shmuel wasn't lying down. So rather, how do you have to darshan the pasuk? So we see a raya that in the pasuk itself we could split from the beginning to the end of the pasuk. So too in our case we're bringing a raya that we're going to split to the subject of the first part of the pasuk with the end of the pasuk, that we can start talking about Kohen Gadol, end up talking about a Kohen Hedit. Says the Gemara, 1 second, another kasha on this pasuk of Almana asher tia Almana mikoyin yikachu mikoyin in mi Yisraeloi. The end of that pasuk says that the Almana, who's Almana of a Kohen, is allowed to get married. This seemingly means that the Almana of a Kohen is mutter to a Kohen, but an Almana Stam Yisrael is not. Explains the Gemara, Achi Kamar, this is what's going on. Mikoyin yikachu, mishar, mikoyin yikachu, mishar koyanim yikachu. That's what the pasuk means. Other koyanim who are not koyanim gedolim, they're going to be the ones that allowed to marry her. Tanami hachi mikoyin yikachu, mishar koyanim yikachu, like we just darshan. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda Omer says another way of darshan the pasuk. Min hamishiyem nekohuna yikachu. Says Rabbi Yehuda. What does the pasuk means? One who's mesiyem lekuna, one is allowed to marry a kohen. That is one the kohanim. Min hamishiyem lekuna, one whose own child, the daughter, would be allowed to marry a kohen. Those are the ones that they can take in marriage, and therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, what's the pasuk coming to exclude? The almana of a ger whose child is aser likehuna. And says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda l'taimei, the Amar, as we've seen, bas ger zachar kebas cholol zachar kol shatanaise bita tanaise almanas kol shiat tanaise bitai, as the Mishnah had taught us, tanaise almanasa, proving the shita Rabbi Yehuda that it all is up to if the person's daughter would be able to marry a kohen, then they are fit lekehuna. And now we continue quoting the shitais of the Mishnah of Yossi Omer, Av ger shenasa giyaris. Such a daughter of a ger and a giyaris is motali kahuna. Omer Rav Amnuna mishvei deula halacha k'Rav Yossi. This is indeed how we paskin, that we have a ger to a giyaris. The child is mutter likahuna. V'chen Rav Chana halacha Rav Yossi miyim shechavri samidish nagu kehanim silsul ba'atzuk Rav Elazar ben Yaakov. Even though we're paskening like Rav Yossi, but says the Gemara, the Kahanim took onto themselves a silsil ba'atzmai, a higher level of conduct, like the opinion of Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, who holds that in such a scenario, if we have a ger and a geiras, then the child, the daughter, would not be mutar likuna. And Amar Rav Nachman Amar li Huna. Huna said to be Balim Malech, if they come to ask what they should do, Marim like Rav Elazar ben Yaakov. No, you say that in Moisina Zakimanik Rav Yossi. If they actually get married, then we're going to allow them to stay, and we're not going to say they're apostle like the opinion of Rav Yossi. But if they come to ask what is the appropriate thing to do, then we tell them the psak like Rav Elazar ben Yaakov. We continue with a Mishnah halfway down. Ayin Ches Amid Beis. Ha'omer b'ni zeh mamzer inay naman. Someone says that this son of mine, this child of mamzer, is not believer. And even if both parents agree, a fetus in the wife's womb, mamzer who? Even if they both say prior to the Leida that the child's a mamzer, they're not believer. No, they are indeed ne'amanim. Says the Gemara, what is this second case of the Mishnah? Adding on that they both admit while the child is unborn that they're still not believed. Says the Gemara, let me buy you kamer. This is the chiddush. Let me buy you ihud like kimle. He doesn't have a credibility. She the kimla that she knows what happened. She of course knows when she became pregnant if it's going to be for this man or not. Even she loy mehamna. And furthermore, even in a scenario where there is a cheskes kashrus lo mehemna, the parents are not believed to say he's possible. Afilu obar nami the less lecheskes the kashrus lo mehemna. Even if the obar does not have a chazak of such a scenario, still the parents would not be believed to say that the child is a mamzer. Rav Yehuda concluded the Mishnah and said no, that the parents are indeed believed to say the child is a mamzer. Explains the Gemara Kiddushin, as we learned in a brisa. Yakir Says the pasuk with regard to the bachar, Yakir, the father recognizes who the bachar is, Yakirenu la'acherim. He's able to identify who's the bachar to others. Mikanem Rav Yehuda Nemer Adam Loimar. This is where Rav Yehuda learns out. A person is believed to say, Zebini bachar, this is my child's bachar. Okay, shame. Sheneman Adam Loimar, Zebini bachar. Says Rav Yehuda, Kach Neman Adam Loimar. Zeben Gerusha, Zeben Chalutza. Chachamim argue, I remain, I never not believe. Amalei Rav Nachman, isn't there Rava? Bishlam Rav Yehuda, I know they'll say Yakir. According to Rav Yehuda, we know how he learned it to pasuk. El Rabbanan, what do they do with the pasuk? Yakir Lamali says the Gemara. You know what they do with the pasuk? Bisarich Hekira. They learn the pasuk is referring to in the case where they don't know who the child is, the bachar, and there you have a chiyuv to be makir to identify who is the bachar. Lamayil Chasal says the Gemara Lasla Pishnayim to give him twofold of the nachla of the inheritance. Pshita. Lamali Kra, why do we need a pasuk? Miu di by mitzvah masna milo yahavle ben achasim. Miudi by misvali matana. If the father wanted to give the child a present, Milo Yahavale, can you not give it to him? So just like the father is able to give the child a present, the father is still alive, so too he should be able to testify that the child is the bachar. Explains the Gemara, you know what the case is necessary for? Ben chasim shenaflu la'acher mikan, from properties that are coming from elsewhere. Rameir damar adamakri davar shel b'laylam. Yakir lamali, it's partial according to Rameir. You're able to give over something that's not even your possession. Says the Gemara, shenaflu like shu gaises. No, it's referring to a case where it falls to him when he's a gaises. So either you need a special pasuk teach us when it falls to him when he nafal imenu davar le'acher falls from elsewhere. I mean, he's not, the father doesn't have the ability to give it over right away, right now, or the case where the father is a gaises and he gets the possessions. That's going to be when you need the special pasuk that tells that the father could say who is the firstborn, who is the bachar regarding nachla. Pick it up from the Mishnah on the next year. B'siyata dishmaya.